Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Daisy Jones and the Six Rewatch podcast. When I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which is another way to say carpe diem, and it's all about going after the things that you want in life. Something I wanted to do this year was rewatch the show Daisy Jones and the Six, and this time talk about it with people, with anybody out there who wants to talk about it with me. So here we are. We are going to talk about episode 3, which is called Someone Saved My Life Tonight, track 3, if you will. This originally aired March 3rd, 2023. So we've got a whole batch here that aired that same date. It was written for television by Nora Kirkpatrick and Will Graham, and it was directed by James Ponsoldt, very familiar name. He's directed the first few episodes so far. And the description, if we want to just sum up somewhat quickly what happened in this episode, Billy, now out of rehab and sober, decides to quit the band in order to be a dedicated father to his infant daughter, Julia. However, he's soon convinced to rejoin the Six. Teddy begins mentoring Daisy, but she struggles to write on demand. Billy writes a new song titled Look at Us Now, Honeycomb. And despite the record label rejecting it, Teddy sees its potential. He brings Daisy into the studio to rewrite the song into a duet. Billy is reluctant at first, but eventually relents, and the recording session proves successful. Meanwhile, Simone is sexually harassed by a male record producer, but her spirits are lifted when she makes a connection with a woman named Bernie from New York City. Graham pines for Karen, but she resists mixing work with any serious romance. And once again, Eddie and Warren not mentioned. Isn't that always the case for Tweedledee and Tweedledum? Okay, so general note here, this is sort of, now that the characters have all met, or pretty much all of the characters have met that need to meet for us right now, we're ready to sort of get into the meat of the story, but we will be rewarded for having spent time understanding the psychology of these characters in these first few episodes, because once you know what makes them tick, we're just going to keep them ticking after this. And so it's kind of important that we understand the foundation of that. And so, if for you, the first few episodes are like, can we just get to it? I do believe that the reason you can enjoy all the following episodes so much is that you saw these, because then you understand these people and you understand when things hit a little too hard or when they push a button that maybe they shouldn't have pushed or knew they were pushing. So I think that's kind of the glory of us being able to immerse ourselves in the backstory of all these folks. And now that we've had the first recording session between Daisy and Billy, and then we're like integrating Daisy even in just this way into the story of the Six, we're certainly going to start speeding things up a bit here, especially when you consider that we're going to get a title card in this episode that says 1974, I believe, and the real-time part of this story ends in 1977. So, we've covered about a decade, well, less than a decade, to get to this point. And now we're going to have just a few years that we're trying to cover, if that. So let's do the scene by scene breakdown with this. We're going to start with opening credits. There's no cold open to this. And we're going to get a close-up on Daisy's demo playing back. So the song that she had recorded for Teddy, the little living room recording that she and Simone did, and that she left on his doorstep. He's now listening to this. And we're going to see that actually Daisy's with him as he's listening to it. I don't know that this is the first time that he's heard it, that they're listening to it together for the first time, but she's there to sort of debrief with him. So we start on the machine that he's playing it back on. The camera pans up, and we're going to see Daisy and Teddy sitting in opposite. She's on a sofa, and he's across from her. And he's listening, and she's watching him intently. She's got a cigarette in her hand. She's pitched forward, but she can't even bother to take she can't even bother to take a drag of the cigarette because she's just so like focused on what his reaction is going to be. So maybe this is the first time that he's hearing it. We can see his pool glimmering in the background. He's got a wonderful place, pretty luxurious house, if you will. So we're hearing her acoustic guitar playing. We're hearing the end of the song. Thank you. I'm sorry. I love you. Goodbye. It's very sort of soft and urgent vocals. Well, actually, urgent might not be the word. Soft and earnest might be the word that I'm using. Vocals. He hears all of this. Clearly, she's there for his reaction, but he looks at her. He says, "Drink." He gets up. She's sitting there waiting for his thoughts. She's like, she can barely breathe, waiting for him to say what he thinks about this. He just gets up. She hasn't said she wants a drink, but he does. He goes over to his bar. He grabs a drink for himself. He comes back over. He says, "So how you been?" She's killing him. He's killing her. He's killing her. Um, this is like, "What do you think of the song, Teddy?" She says, "Do you like it or not?" He says, "Well, at least you stopped pretending you don't care." Gotcha. Um, Maybe like, "What do I need you for?" She might have asked him at one point in a previous episode, and he's like, "Well, maybe now, suddenly, you're seeing value." He says, "At least you stop pretending you don't care." That's progress. She's still waiting. He says, "I like it, Daisy, very much." He is he's got so much intention behind everything he's saying. He likes it very much. I don't feel like he loves it. I don't think that this is the Teddy who loves it, but it's a solid song. He says, "What can I do for you?" She says, "I don't know." It's sort of an admittance. She's like, I'm not sure." Because actually, the question, "What do I need you for?" that she asked in a previous episode, maybe she still doesn't actually have a full sense of the scope of what he can do. Granted, she's probably had discussions about that with Simone, but what can he do for her? I don't know if she's dreamed that big or in that specific way. Teddy says, "Well, what do you want?" She says, "I want to make a record." He says, "Okay." And she's still leaning all the way in, and she starts to get sort of like that childish excitement that we can get from Daisy. She's like, "And I want people to listen to it over and over again until it breaks. And then I want to make another one." And she sort of captures, Riley Keough here sort of captures the energy. It takes me back to the first episode where we saw young 8-year-old Daisy listening to those huge headphones when her parents were having a party and they didn't want her to be listening to music. And just the way she got lost in that album that she was listening to. And I think what she's describing here is she wants to make something for the young version of herself, for the person like her who's playing that record over and over. Um, and actually, now that I say this, and as I'm thinking about it, maybe part of the reason that image is conjured is that when she gets into the recording studio later, those huge headphones are kind of reminding me of the huge headphones that she wore when she was a little kid. So Teddy says, "Well, you've got one great song. All we need now is 10 more." She smiles. She puts out her cigarette. It's time to get to work. She says, "Give me a week." She gets up. He chuckles. And I don't know if that chuckle is because, man, she's got bravado, or because he's thinking like, "Man, you're about to find out what it's like to really try to get a whole album with the songs in a week." Um, I don't know if he's like impressed by her confidence, or if he's chuckling at her naivete. Like I'm not really sure where that's coming from for him. We know that she is going to struggle writing a whole album worth of songs in a week. So she he's like, "Man." Okay. He says, "Oh, and Daisy, one more thing. This is now the worst song on your album." She nods at him. She's like, "Okay, sounds fair." It's a fairly tall order, what she's got in front of her right now, and she may not even know how tall. So we're going to hear we're going to hear the needle drop, "Mama told me to watch out." And this one's by Freddie Henchy and the Soul Setters. We're going to see a title card come up, "Someone Saved My Life Tonight" for track 3. Um, a few lyrics that we're going to get here: "Mama told me to watch out for girls like you." We're going to see Billy smoking. We've got his sweatshirt on, his cap, um, his Pittsburgh hat, and I think it's a baseball cap. And he's standing in front of like a really nice manicured landscape, like he's getting out of rehab, the place that he was checked into at the end of the last episode. "Mama told me to watch out for girls like you. Mama told me to watch out for what you do. Mama told me to watch out. She said, you give me the blues." So I like that we've switched over to looking at Billy here, because maybe, you know, maybe he should be watching out for Daisy. And maybe that's meant to be a nice little bridge between these two different worlds that are going to collide soon, but haven't yet. 1974 comes up on the screen. And Graham is going to pull up in his car and he smiles. So we skipped over the whole point while Billy was at rehab. Um, because what story would we really be telling with the six right now with Billy at rehab? But it's time to pick him up. It's time to reintegrate him. So Graham says, "Hey, world famous rock star Billy Dunn." Billy just sort of scoffs. Graham chuckles a bit. Graham gets out of the car. He hugs Billy. We're going to cut to them driving, and Graham is just chatting away. I'm actually not sure. I mean, I assume that Billy had some communication with the band while he and with Camilla. Well, maybe not with Camilla. I assume that he had some communication with the band, at least with his brother, while he was in rehab. Probably not a ton, but like the last time he saw them, he was just picked up by Teddy and didn't come back. And, Camilla, she had this baby in the hospital by herself and, was her mother was across the country, right? So her mother's here now, but like surely she was alone in labor. And so, like, this is a lot. People are really still coping with the fallout. And it's tricky, right? Because Billy's coping with his own fallout and he's he seems to be very aware that recovered is a daily process and that he feels like he's in a fragile state here. You can see that all up and down this episode. And yet he's like hurt so many people and he's caused all these problems for the people who were leaning on him. And it's like finding that balance between taking accountability and not really having the strength to do that yet. So I mean, I think it's a really interesting depiction of this quandary of like what happens when you come home and everybody expects you to take accountability and then somehow reintegrate. And who knows really what this is supposed to look like, but Billy is treading so softly that it makes it hard. Um, and I don't know if there's an easy way to do any of this, to be honest with you. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're in the car, and Graham is chatting away because I think he's kind of prepared to welcome Billy back. There is baggage here. There's stuff that Graham will say. Graham is a character who, especially when we see interview Graham, he has a tendency to remember things with a smile as interview Graham for the future. That probably he had some deeper, darker thoughts about them as they happened. And I don't know if I ever get the feeling that I understand, like maybe much later in this series, I'll see a little bit more of what Graham's really thinking. But so far, it feels like Graham is sort of like a grin and bear it kind of guy, even for the audience. Um, and interestingly, Daisy's going to say later about the song that Billy wrote, like, this is a simple song and you don't seem like a simple guy. And if anything, like, it sounds like a song Graham could have written for the way that I understand Graham as a character here. Um, so Graham is just trying to keep the conversation going. He's being pleasant. Maybe had more conversation with Billy than anybody else while Billy has been away. I don't know. Um, but Graham is saying, yeah, Eddie built his own bass, if you can believe it. And we tried a new backing section on Look Me in the Eye that I think you're really gonna. Billy's looking straight ahead. He's focused. He can't really hear any of this. He says, Graham, I just need to meet my daughter. He can't take all this in. He's got one priority, one driving force right now. Graham says, yeah, right. He chuckles. He's like, "You're gonna love her, man." The other day we were hanging out in the yard and she just looks up at me with those big eyes and out of nowhere she just smiles, like not some smile like she's got gassed, just like a real, and then we pan over to Billy. He bursts into tears. And Graham isn't even seeing any of this. We were focused on Graham because Graham was focused on himself and what he was saying and just keeping conversation going. And, if they had been talking while Billy was in rehab, maybe they're hitting some of the same notes they would have before because, I mean, Eddie's built his own bass feels like something that might have been covered. So I don't know. I don't know if this is their first conversation or if they've been talking, but Graham doesn't quite realize like Graham doesn't have like quite as much capacity, I think, for empathy here. I think interview Graham has more of a sense of it. And certainly now, after all the experiences he's had with Billy, he probably has more of a sense of it. But in this moment, he doesn't realize that maybe it would be weird for him to be going on and on about his experiences with his niece, who is Billy's daughter that he's never seen and is probably the greatest shame of his life that he hasn't. Graham is like just talking to fill the space, and I don't know if he realizes that this is like the worst possible angle he could take. But there Billy is bursting into tears, and Graham just stops in his tracks, explaining the smile that he saw on Billy's daughter's face. Interview Graham says, "We didn't really understand addiction back then. I mean, I thought he'd just dry out and things would go back to the way they used to be." Okay, fair. There's a lot of things that we have language for now or that we had language for many years later that I'm sure they didn't have the language for and what wasn't a comfortable conversation topic in 1974. But what does back to normal really look like here? Because he already saw that Billy had been trying to escape the family situation with the alcohol addiction to begin with. Um, he knows, I don't know, maybe this is just something that I think about and somebody in Graham's position wouldn't be thinking about, but like you both had the same dad. You kind of know Billy's hangups with his own dad. And it isn't a huge leap to be able to say maybe Billy has some deep-seated issues with the idea of fatherhood. Like there could be something to this. Um, but Graham hasn't thought that deeply about it. Maybe he can't. So, all right, we're going to see Billy and Graham get back to the house. Everybody's waiting at the garage. Warren's got a mustache, big thick mustache now. He's got a shirt that says, I'm trying to notice fashion, but I have no language for it, right? And I especially don't have language for words that I don't know what they're supposed to mean. Warren's wearing a shirt that says descargas, which I mean there is a literal Spanish translation for this, but I can't imagine what is the context for this. I tried to do a quick search on this, didn't come up with anything that seemed right. So maybe is there like an underground band named that, or like what's Descargas? But he comes out, he gives Billy a hug. Warren's like, my man. Billy just like points to the mustache. He's like, looks good on you. And says, yeah, it's not too bad. Karen gives him a hug. He's being so quiet. He's so reserved. He's so awkward. He's so uncomfortable. He's like afraid to move or breathe, really. Karen says, you good? I was like, yeah, been worse. Fair. Warren puts his hand in. He's like, Pittsburgh on 3. Everybody's like, no, not happening. Okay, no Pittsburgh on 3. Eddie is kind of excited, like maybe the most excited to see Billy that we've seen him in a while. He's holding his bass because he was really proud of this thing and he wants to show it to Billy. He's like, man, I got to show you this bass. And Graham is, because he had this conversation with Billy in the car, he's able to sort of feel this a little bit, and he sort of holds up his hand to Eddie and he says, wait, just give him a minute. He has to go meet his daughter. So they all nod. They're like, right. They step back because they haven't really, you know what, frankly, like, surely they know the circumstances. Like they're in a house with Camilla. Um, surely they know that Billy never made it into the hospital room to see her and his daughter. Surely they know that, but I don't know if they really fully processed that. Um, I feel like Camilla is keeping her feelings about it pretty bottled up. Her mom's there, and her mom has a real silent, like sort of passive aggressive energy. And I'm sure that she's talked about it with Camilla, but I imagine she hasn't been airing that dirty laundry in front of the bandmates, the mom that is. So I don't know. These folks kind of seem like la-di-da, a little bit clueless about the gravity of the situation. And, fair, they're young. They they don't have the same types of pressures and concerns. And there's like very few points of similarity between their lives and all of the things that Billy is experiencing here. And he's just been gone. So it's been sort of like they've been able to sort of do a version of what their lives are meant to be without him. And now they have to sort of make peace with what it looks like when he's there. Okay, so Billy's like, yes, good to see you guys. He nods at everybody. Eddie is like, good to see you, Billy. They all welcome him back. He walks slowly into the house. It's like a walk of doom. Um, we see Camilla and like that contrast between Billy just sort of like slowly dum dum da dum dum da dum da dum da dum walking to the house and then seeing Camilla inside playing with her baby daughter, like the bright light of the room. It's just like, oh well, this is going to be disrupted really soon. She's sort of blowing raspberries into Julia. um, she's playing with her kid. Her mom's in there folding laundry. She's doing, all the things that you can do to sort of calm her down and play with her. And so the door opens and Billy enters and disrupts this whole mood. Camilla looks up. Her mom stands up. Billy just stays at the door looking very uncomfortable. He doesn't move to approach Camilla. He doesn't move to approach Julia. He doesn't even look at Camilla's mom for kind of a while here. Camilla says hi, Billy says hi, their gaze kind of lingers, and it just takes a little bit too long. Billy takes off his cap and addresses her mom, and he says, hi, Mrs. Alvarez. And Mrs. Alvarez gives an imperceptible nod, but it definitely feels disapproving to me. She's like, mm-hmm. It's kind of, I feel like there was an unspoken line here. I feel like there was a you. Like she just isn't interested. Um, so Julia's still fussing, and in a way that kind of cuts the awkwardness because there's a baby noise being made, but that makes it in its own way even more awkward for Billy. So Camilla cuts that awkwardness and she says, you want to come say hi to the baby, is what she meant there, I think. And Billy sort of reluctantly agrees. He puts down his bag very awkwardly. It's like, how long can I possibly take to have to do this task? He walks over very slowly. He looks down at Julia, but he doesn't touch her. This is how you are when you don't like I get this. I don't have kids. I never really wanted kids. I what am I saying? Never really, never wanted kids. And I've babysat kids before, but babies, like when people bring babies into the room, I'm like, hmm, like I'm not a person who wants to hold your baby. Anybody that I know who has a baby knows that. They don't try to pass me their baby. Unfortunately, Billy has that energy and he's this child's father. And that's what makes this not funny and not relatable, right? Like, but I get the energy of it. And then I have to multiply it by like 100 because what has to be going on for you that this child is part you, and you still can't, you don't feel compelled at all. Um he looks afraid of Julia and afraid of himself around Julia. I'm not sure which is worse for him, to be honest. Maybe more afraid of himself around Julia, to be honest. Um, so he says, hey kiddo, sorry I'm late. I mean, first words to his baby girl. Camilla picks her up. She says, do you want to pick her up? And it's kind of like Camilla picks her up. She's going to transfer her to the crib, but this would be the opportunity to transfer Julia to Billy if he wanted to hold her. Julia's kind of crying a little bit. Billy's reluctant. He kind of like takes a little bit of a shift back. He says, I don't want to make her mad. Camilla says she's not mad. Her mom speaks in Spanish to her. She says, Camilla, I can take her for a walk. Camilla says in Spanish, we're fine, Mom. Thank you. Mom leaves. Mom is very well aware she needs to not be in this room anymore. It's just a matter of how we get there. It's like, this is not a conversation I actually as much as I'm sure she has thoughts and opinions on the situation, and she's probably been sharing them with Camilla along the way, they obviously need to have a conversation amongst themselves first. So Julia's fussing a little bit. Camilla is standing with Julia in her arms, and she's like, she's fine. She just needs a nap. So Billy's gonna follow her over to the crib. He's like, all right, can I help with that? Do you need anything picked up from the store? He's like, is there something I can do that is not touching this child? Maybe I can run out to get something for you. Um, I get it, right? It's like, how can I be of use when I have literally no idea what being of use looks like in this situation? And Camilla knows that. And there's like this so many layers of the conversation they need to have that it's like, where do you even start with this? So Camilla's like, we're fine. Nope. Julia's crying a bit. Camilla's sort of shushing her gently. She puts her into the crib. Billy's just awkward. And now Camilla's awkward because she doesn't even, there was, Julia was like a tactile thing that she could be doing with her hands and her body to keep part of her distracted from the incredible discomfort of dealing with Billy and everything that's happened with them. And now that she's put Julia in the crib, she doesn't have this a whole other layer of things to do to distract her from that. So now Camilla looks really awkward. And Billy steps closer to her. He kind of puts her hand, I can't quite tell, but he puts his hand either on hers or by hers at the crib. And he leans in to touch his forehead against hers. And even with foreheads touching, she looks incredibly disconnected from him. She doesn't want this to be happening. He says, I missed you. She pulls her head away. She says, well, my mom's been sleeping here with us. She's been helping with the night feedings. So maybe you should, just for the first few nights. I mean, Billy gets it. He gets what she's saying, even though she hasn't spoken in a complete sentence here. We understand what she's saying. Like, I can't with you right now. Like, you be back in the house, but like, I need a little space. I need us not to have touching foreheads. So Billy nods. He's like, of course, sure. And we close this scene and Camilla's standoffish. Fair enough. Makes sense to me. We're going to get a series of interviews here from the six. Eddie says the label dropped us a week after the tour was canceled. But I like that they did this way because this is exposition, but at least they're going to make us switch the scene over to these interviews and they're going to give us like a line each from the band members so that it just kind of keeps it moving and keeps it constantly fresh because exposition can get draining after a while. Eddie says the label dropped us a week after the tour was canceled. Warren says they made us pay back our advance and everything. It's probably hurting a little bit financially here. Graham says I kept us practicing as much as I could and got a job at the body shop. Again, I think Graham's contribution there is interesting. Like, I kept us practicing as much as I could. I got a job at the body shop. I was trying to fix problems. Everybody else is mentioning what the problems were. Graham's like, I was keeping us on track. I was holding it together. I was grinning and bearing it. Warren says, yeah, I was working down at Malibu Harbor, cleaning boats, which I loved, and doing a lot of mushrooms, which I also loved. And he chuckles a little bit. And he says, basically, we were back where we started, worse even. So of these three, Eddie sort of keeps it negative the whole time. Warren is like, yeah, wasn't great. We had to pay it back, but I found these things to do that I enjoyed. And Graham's like, I buckled down and worked hard and kept the group focused. That kind of sums up their attitudes, I think, as characters. The interviewer says to Eddie, are you still upset about it? And Eddie says, me? Nah. He's got this look like, upset? What? He says, me? Nah, I mean, holding on to that shit will be the death of you, but he really fucked us over. I kind of feel like the way he just answered that tells me he's still holding on to it. Still now. When the interviewer said, are you still upset about it? The answer was actually yes. But I think that Eddie thinks that he has gone past it and hasn't. So he's got some levels of how much he might be lying to himself here, I think. We're going to see Graham come into Billy's bedroom. It's now Billy's bedroom. There's two twin beds in this room. Maybe it's upstairs. Um, it looks like a kid's room. These are just twin beds kind of on opposite walls from each other. Graham says, "You feeling okay up here?" And Billy is like laying it. This has got to be an uncomfortable. I don't know how many times they did this scene. Sam Claflin is taller than I am, so he's able to sort of lie across the bed, but his head's up against the wall, and he's just kind of at this weird angle. Graham's like, "You feeling okay up here?" Billy's like, "Yeah, man, it's great." Not looking at him at all. Graham sits on the other bed. He grabs a guitar. He starts to strum it. And he's kind of getting into it. Maybe he can sort of reel Billy back in that way. He says, "You want to play a little?" Billy very quietly says, "Maybe later." Graham says, "Yeah, man, I get it, you know?" He is eager. He's supportive. He's got this puppy dog energy. It's like puppy dog, but a little bit muted from that. It's not dialed up to a 10. It's like a level 5 puppy. Um, Maybe level 4. He says, "I get it. You know, maybe tomorrow." Whenever you're ready, man. I mean, look, everybody is really excited. Billy is kind of resigned. He says, "I can't do it, Graham." He's just kind of, Graham has just been sort of beating this "it's going to be fine" drum since he picked him up. And Billy's like, "I can't do it." Graham's confused. He says, "You can't do what?" Billy says, "I mean, I'm out." He can't even look at his brother right now. He says, "I'm done." Graham's kind of, he's disappointed, but it hasn't fully hit him yet. So it's like the first bloom of the disappointment. He says, "Look, why don't you get some rest?" All right. Billy sits up. He says, "Listen, I can't be like Dad. I have to look after my family." Which on the one hand is the thing that maybe Graham should understand, but Graham had a different experience even within the same family. And Graham is his brother. So he's like, "Yeah, Billy, we're your family. All right. I'm your family." He's starting to get a little fired up because in order to take care of his wife and daughter, or be the version of himself where he could potentially do that, it might feel like he is abandoning Graham, which he's pretty much never done until this whole thing blew up with his alcoholism and his substance abuse. So Billy says, will you just tell him I'm out?" Graham says, "Everybody down there, Billy, they've been waiting for you." Billy's like, "Will you just tell them for me, please?" Graham says, "No, you can tell them yourself." Fair enough, Graham. It's not on you to deliver this news. Billy does need to man up and share this news, even though it's going to be hard. And, I'm sure there are a lot of things he has to do right now that he's been anxious about since he's been in rehab. But this is one of the things he has to take care of. So Graham says, "You're going to tell him yourself." It's like, "Oh, we were so close, man." He leaves the room disappointed. We're going to go over to Daisy and Simone's place. And Daisy, who has promised a full album worth of really, really good songs, album worthy songs in a week, she's seeing what that actually means. She's pacing around her bedroom. She's got her long shirt on. She's reading her journal. She's not happy with anything she's written so far. She's like, "Okay, let's look at this. All right, what do we have? This is bad." We hear guitar strumming, but we don't see her strumming it. We see her pacing around the room and walking. She's sighing. She's just reading fragments. "Through the fault of, there's something up in Utah. The grain or the sand that has had to cherish." Oh my God. She can't with what she's already written so far. She throws the book fully, she just throws it forcefully against the wall. And she launches herself face down onto her bed. And she's like, "Oh," and it's, she's the way that Billy was lying sort of across his bed before on his back, she's lying across the bed on her stomach. So it's sort of like superimposed, sort of a look here. Simone comes in. I'm guessing it's bedtime. Her hair is wrapped. She's probably been either trying to sleep or trying to get ready to go to sleep. She's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" Daisy's still face down. She's like writing. "It's all part of the process, Daisy." Simone scoffs. She's like, "Okay." The phone rings. Simone says, "You gonna get that?" Daisy says, "Oh." She gets up to get the phone. She answers it, and it's for Simone. She turns to Simone. She kind of covers the receiver. She says, "Somebody named Lee Parlin." Simone's like, "Are you sure?" Apparently, this is a big shot music producer guy. Daisy looks at Simone and she's sort of playing with her here. She says into the phone, she's not here. And then watches Simone like really quickly approaching to get the phone. She's like, well, she's no, here she is. Just messing with Simone. Maybe don't do that with a fancy music producer guy, but maybe do if it's this guy. Because Lee Parlin, man. Simone picks up the phone. Daisy goes back to her bed, and Lee says, "Hey, I'm over here working with the 3220s. How fast can you be here?" She's gonna smile. And so she's got some work to do in the studio. But first, we are going to see a backyard party. There, I don't know what this property is actually. It's got a beautiful pool. But is this a house or is this some sort of a venue? Because it's got this so it looks like we're getting a long shot over the pool into a house. There's a beautiful sort of it's like an outside living room with like with a view to the pool, but like living room furniture, and then you can go inside, fully inside the house. But along the sides, it's just it's like these covered walkways with these beautiful pillars. Stunning property. And, it's all lit for a party. They're playing disco music. So Simone and Daisy are at this party. They're blowing off some steam. They're having a conversation amongst themselves. We're hearing Let's Dance by Family Plan. And okay, so we're going to get Simone talking to Daisy in this sort of like outside lounge area near the pool, but still sort of in the house. Daisy is wearing shorts, really short shorts, a cropped top, boots, and almost all of that is hidden underneath this big tan fur coat with these big sleeves. One of the things that I'm trying to notice, I'm trying to be able to describe the fashion to you, right? But the reason I notice this coat is that a lot of times Daisy will wear stuff with like bigger sleeves. And when she does, anytime she walks forcefully or with intention or purpose or anger, it makes her like the bigger the sleeves are, the more it makes her bring her arms out to the side when she walks. So it's the movement that I notice because of the clothing. But I guess that's what happens, right? I think, actors say that a lot when they have to get into costume. It makes them walk differently or it makes them feel like the character in certain ways. And that's something I noticed for Daisy. So, okay. So Simone, she's saying, and then I was supposed to do just the chorus, but it was going so well. He said, well, would you do the whole song? He said I had a one of a kind sound. Daisy says, well, he's right. Simone says, and that we should do big, big things together. That's what he said. She gets distracted because she sees a woman across the party in a conversation with somebody else looking at her. And so Simone's sort of like drifting off, paying attention to this woman across the way. Daisy says, well, of course he did, because you're a star. Teddy said this was going to happen. He said it was only a matter of time. And then she notices that Simone is not paying attention and she's actually looking at something else. So Simone kind of notices she's been caught. She giggles a little bit to try to cover it up. And she says, sorry, what were you saying? To me, it feels like a cover up energy. It doesn't feel like she's trying to bring Daisy into it. It feels like she's like, oh, sorry, sorry, sorry. Daisy looks to see what Simone was looking at and sees the woman still looking at Simone. And Daisy instantly reads the situation and is impressed and happy for Simone. I think that's what I'm seeing here. She says, go talk to her. I mean, it felt like unexpected wing woman energy. All right, Daisy is now dancing by herself in a room full of dancing people in that sort of like inside lounge area. She's shimmying in her big coat. And we're going to see Bernie and Simone talk by the pool while Daisy is otherwise occupied with dancing. Bernie says, I'm Bernice. Simone's like, Simone, they shake hands. Bernie says, well, I'm Bernie to most people. And you're a singer. Simone's like, wait, you know? Bernie says, I heard you guys talking. Like, I was listening to you from all the way over there. Simone says, oh, right, right. Bernie says, so what's your sound? Simone says, still kind of figuring that out. Bernie says, hmm. She writes down her address on a piece of paper. She gives it to Simone. She says, this is the club where I work. Simone says, but this is a New York address. Bernie gets a little closer. Not really close, but she gets a little closer because you can tell she's interested. She's putting some signals out there. She says, come by if you're ever in town. I could show you around. And Simone's a little surprised. She's kind of taken aback. Bernie says, I'm sorry, did I read you wrong? Simone's mouth is just sort of hanging open. Um, we're gonna see interview Simone. She's got much tighter curls in this 1974 version of herself. She's got this like sort of light wave going on, but this interview Simone is polished and sleek, and she's got a whole look about her. She's got like a brown knit shirt and like a brown chunky necklace, and she seems to have like a really confident style here. Um, she says it's a powerful thing when someone comes along and just sees right through you. Simone at the party says, I'm not used to people being this forward. And Bernie laughs. She's like, you think this is forward? And they both just sort of laugh a little bit. And I think, again, with Simone, I always find myself wondering because I, Simone always leaves me wanting to know more about her. She always leaves me, I can see all these thoughts running through her mind, and I've decided what I think those thoughts are, and maybe you've decided what you think those thoughts are, but we don't necessarily get those thoughts like answered by Simone. She doesn't necessarily tell you everything that she's thinking. So, she interviews Simone all those years later, can say it's a powerful thing when someone comes along and just sees right through you. But it leaves me wondering things like, does she date? Like, how often does she find herself getting picked up by anybody? How she certainly, I mean, seems to be attracted to Bernie and intrigued by Bernie. Doesn't seem to me that she's publicly out or even, I, I don't think she'd ever told Daisy that, but Daisy understood instantly. So I don't know. I find it so interesting, all these questions around like, what kind of a social life does Simone actually have? And how much of this has she actually owned in the past? Um, for Bernie to say, you think this is forward? Um, because what she had actually done here was she had looked at Simone. Simone came over to her. She said, they introduced each other. They shook hands. She said, here's my New York address if you're ever in the area. And Simone was like, for Bernie, that apparently was very tame. And even I can say that was probably very tame. So you know, like how how much of this experience has Simone ever really had? Like what kind of relationships has she had, if any? And I don't know, I just feel like I'm willing to bet with Simone as a character, when I put that out there, how many different answers come back to me from anybody who watches this, right? Like how many different versions of Simone do we all have in our heads? Because it's all Simone, right? Okay. So now we're going to go back to see what Daisy's been up to. This is one of my favorite Daisy movement moments. She's dancing, but her dancing here, so the song is Naturally by HP Riot. Her dancing is jumping, and every time she jumps, she just twists her head from side to side. I don't know how dizzy this made her. There are some dance moves that Riley Keough has as Daisy that must have made her sick to her stomach when they were filming this. Because it's not just like, sure, yeah, we see a few seconds of it in a clip, but how many times do you have to do this to get into the scene? And there she is in this really warm coat. I mean, my goodness. But I love that. It feels like such a Daisy movement. It's so it's such like a bold, unexpected choice, and that's Daisy all the way for me. Okay, so she sees something that makes her stop, not the way that Simone seeing Bernie made her stop, which was in a very good way. Oh my goodness, something fascinating that I want to know more about. That was Simone. Not Daisy sees something that fills her with rage. It is Wyatt, the man who stole her song. He's talking with somebody at this very same party. She storms out of the house, arms swinging to the side, and she walks straight to him. And you know he's got hell to pay here. And he's like, "Damn girl, look at you. How long has it been?" She doesn't address him at first. She introduces herself to the girl that he's with. Boss move. Like, I'm the person who's about to end your conversation, Daisy. Second reason that she did that is that this is how she wants to be known now, and that's not the name he knows her by. So he raises that. He says, "You know, back when I met you, your name was Margaret." Um, and had we heard that before? I'm trying to think. We saw the when she took the name Daisy when she wrote it into her journal, but had we heard them actually call her Margaret, her parents, earlier? I'm not sure. So he's saying her name was Margaret. She says, "Yeah, and you'd never had a number one record." Okay, she's gonna go there. He would have known it by the walk that she did in those big sleeves on the way over to her. He would have known it by her boss move of introducing herself to the girl whose conversation she was about to interrupt. And now she's just bringing it up to him. Wyatt raises a glass. He's like, "Yeah." Daisy gets in his face. This is another really fun choice, and I don't know to what extent this was written into the script or if this is a Riley Keough choice. She gets right in his face, which you would expect to then lead to her shouting, but she lowers her voice. And I don't feel like it's meant to be protecting him. I feel like it's like, it's like her anger has gotten, it's like earthquakes. Like it's not just how far away they are from you, it's also depth under the surface. And it's not just the magnitude, it's depth under the surface. She got really close in, so she didn't have to be as loud because it would have just as much impact. I don't know why that visual came to my head, but there it is. She says, "You know, you could at least say thank you." He says, "Thank you. Thank you for what?" She steps back. She looks like she's gonna step back to walk away, but she's not really gonna do that. She steps closer. She steps even closer, and she just shoves him backward into the pool. And Wyatt was so not expecting this. He's so not prepared for her wrath that he just like straight as a board falls backward into the pool. He's holding a drink in his hand. His legs are just like a little bit one in front of the other, and he just falls backwards right into the pool. He like his arms don't flail. He's just like, "Yeah, you deserve it, Wyatt." Um, and then we're gonna hear gasps from some of the party goers, and when he surfaces, she stands right at the edge of the pool, looking down on him. She's got her hands on her hips, big sleeves showing extra power. She sings, she's all around your head, and she's dancing in the corners of your mind. She takes this big, beautiful breath. Stumble on Sublime until you can't speak. And then we're going to get, there's more to the song, but we're actually going to cut to interview Daisy. She says, "I mean, sure, a normal person probably would have let that go." She's sort of smiles. She shrugs a little bit like, "I'm not a normal person." I got to tell you, Daisy, I wouldn't have let it go. I mean, she had never had an opportunity to confront this man about him stealing her song. Here he is. Why not? Um, I mean, would nobody do that? Like, I don't know. It, I think maybe the show is trying to tell us like this is the type of confrontation that Daisy is willing to have. But I'm not sure that few people would have that same type of confrontation. And for what it's worth, this confrontation is, I don't know what happened after she sang the song to him, but she's not even really outing him. Like, she could have let him have it and given all of the exposition that everybody at that party would have needed to know, "You stole the song, I wrote it, blah, 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 blah." She just sang lyrics back to him. And so people could interpret that however they want to. maybe they understand what it actually meant, but they don't have confirmation of it. So she actually stays kind of like in maybe a legally okay place with this, but gets her point across very clearly, I think. And I'm not so sure that it's like the type of thing Daisy would do that nobody else would do. I don't know, would you do this? I I don't know. How far would you go if you saw Wyatt at this party and your profession didn't rely on it, your social world didn't rely on it, if you were going to see this guy, never see him again, and probably like it would be no impact one way or the other what happened at this party, what would you do? Okay. We're gonna go back to the Six's house. Eddie is in. What a great look. We're gonna get this throne chair. It's not the only time we're gonna see this chair in this show, but it's my favorite usage of it. Eddie on the throne, and he's wielding a cigarette in his hand. So once again, it just has this very like regal image about him. And Karen and Graham are sort of leaned up against a piece of furniture that's against the window. And so he is just sitting alone and they're kind of huddled up in the same place. And Warren's also in the room in a separate area that we're not looking at right now. Karen and Graham are looking kind of disgruntled. Eddie is putting Billy in his place. He says, "Who the fuck do you think you are, man?" We now see Billy standing in front of him, sort of taking his beating, like not a physical beating, but a verbal one and like an emotional one. Like, you've disappointed us, man. He looks sort of dejected, sort of weak. Graham says, "Look, everybody just calm down, okay?" And he's like, "Oh, I can't be the only one who's pissed here." Billy says, "I don't know what else you want me to say. You guys don't even need me. You have the songs, you've got the fan base. I'm sure if you just," Eddie says, Billy, if you're going, go." And he sort of waves him away like a king telling the subject to leave his presence. Billy says, "All right." He leaves the room. And Warren is sitting on the couch, kind of dazed at all this. I don't know that Warren saw this coming. He says, "So now what do we do?" Interview Karen says, "I mean, bands fall apart, it's rock and roll. I thought this one was different." She would have expected this from the Winters, but she didn't see this coming with this particular group of people. We're going to hear the song "Will It Go Round in Circles" by Billy Preston. And we're going to see, Billy's trying to make some changes. He's doing all of this with good intentions. He came out of rehab understanding what his priorities probably should be. He Whether or not he wants them to be that, or I don't know. I don't know what Billy wants, but I think he came out of this thinking, I need to prioritize my family, and there's a lot of temptation, and and I feel very weak, and I have to be very careful, and here are the following 10 things that were normal for me before that I can't do now. And so he's going to abstain from as many of those things as possible, if not all of them. And he's going to try to reform. And so we're going to see Billy. He's now next to Camilla in bed. The light's coming in through the window in the morning as she's sleeping, but he's awake and he's going to be industrious. He's going to get started. So Will It Go Round in Circles is I think an interesting, in terms of tempo and the sound of the music. It has this very like sort of upbeat energy. Will It Go Round in Circles is a little bit of a bleak message as a song title. But Billy's going to try to be industrious as we're hearing the song. So I've got a song. I ain't got no melody. I'm going to sing it to my friends. Oh, what kind of song is that? And why are you singing that to your friends? So we're going to see Billy repairing a window screen. We're going to hear that again. Got a song. I ain't got no melody. I'm going to sing it to my friends. Will it go round in circles? We see him going for a run in his sweats. Will it fly high like a bird up in the sky? Will it go round in circles? We're going to see him back at home drinking water instead of any of the things he was drinking before this episode. Will it fly high like a bird up in the sky? We see him fixing a light switch. He's like, that should do it. He tests the light. I mean, he's getting things done. He's being industrious. I would say that the things that he's doing probably don't feel anything like making music. They're very solitary acts. He doesn't interact with his family at all for any of that. even though he's doing all this in theory to be better for them. It's just he's so in his own head. He's so solitary, so self-focused. It's this really interesting thing to me in order to think about the other people he's trying to be there for, he has to be completely focused on himself. And again, not really having experience with addiction, this seems like it probably is about right. I mean, I think when you think like mental health wise, if I take the substance use out of it, if I think about mental health, I think it's sometimes like if you're in a really bad place, if you're depressed, you need to be really focused on getting yourself to a place of stability before you can really be there for somebody else. So I think there's a lot of different situations where this could still be true, but I think it can't be any less frustrating for Camilla. He's now in this bed with her and like he's not really interacting with anybody in this house. He's sort of backed away from all of them. He's called his shot to do that. We're going to get a knock on the door. Teddy Price comes in and he's like, yeah, the fellow said you were back here. We're going to cut to Billy and Teddy sitting outside. Billy's like, yeah, let me guess. The guys asked you to come change my mind. Teddy says, of course they did, but I'm not going to. Billy smiles a bit. Teddy says, I actually think you're doing the right thing. Billy says, so why did you come then? Teddy says, I missed you. Billy takes that in. It's like, oh, you weren't here because you're expecting something from me. I mean, I in a way, maybe it would be easier for Billy if they could talk about the work piece of this. Like if they could talk about, you need to do this. No, 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 I'm not going to do this. But when Teddy takes all of that off the table, when there's nothing contractual to discuss, and it's just about them as people, does Billy really want to go there? He's kind of keeping things buttoned up. So does he really want this father figure of a man who is the one who saw him at his very worst moment and knows exactly what happened? Does he really want to have that conversation? So Billy says, I don't think I ever said thank you for, Teddy says, no, 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 I'm just glad it seems to have taken because it doesn't always. Billy doesn't respond. Teddy says, it's never going to get any easier. You know that? Billy has thought about that. He's been thinking about that by the minute, every minute that he's awake, I think. Very quietly, he says, yeah. He feels like he's so inward, he's so internally focused, and he is so terrified of making a misstep. I think he has urges to make missteps on a regular basis and is very afraid of what that would look like and of losing control and of the repercussions of it and losing Camilla and Julia. I mean, even though you might say, does he have them right now? What does it look like to have them? This is a man who looks terrified to me and quiet and sheepish. Okay, interviewgram says, for me, it was all about moving forward. We were going to see Graham and Karen at a party. They're just sort of hanging out. They're leaning against a sitting area. They're looking out at people at the party, and they're trying to scope out who could be a good next Billy. Graham's like, all right, not him. Karen's like, nope, not him. He's offensive. Graham laughs. He says, we're going to find somebody, okay? Karen, I don't know a ton about describing makeup either, but I did notice her when she shuts her eyes, like the eyeliner is so thick and the lashes are so long. It definitely doesn't look real to me, but maybe that was the style, right? Maybe that was like the really, really thick makeup. So she says, guys like your brother, Graham, they don't come on trees. They don't grow on trees. He says, okay, I get that. Look, I'm going to put an ad in the paper. I'm going to talk to the guys at the Troubadour. Like he's out there somewhere, okay? I mean, he's got to be. She's getting antsy. He's like, what are you thinking? She says, I'm thinking I want to get drunk. She finishes off the rest of her drink. Again, even, Karen, who is she's honest. She says what she's thinking, The news isn't good right now, as far as she is concerned. And once again, we see it once again from Graham. He's always jumping in and saying, well, here's what we're going to do about it. I'm going to put an ad in the paper. I'm going to do this. I'm going to talk to the guys at the troubadour. I'm going to do things to solve the problem. He is the one who's consistently doing things to solve the problem. We're going to see some other guy talking to Warren and Eddie. Warren is drinking. Eddie is spinning a drink umbrella in a straw. That's where they're at right now. The guy says, okay, but are you still going to be called the Six? I mean, because there's four of you now. And Warren's like, yeah, man, makes it even funnier, doesn't it? And he's like, look, if you don't get the joke, I can't help you, man. The guy doesn't get it. And so Eddie can't help him. So these are the kind of guys that they're talking to right now. We're going to go back to Karen and Graham. And Karen's like on a new topic. She doesn't want to talk about finding a new band member anymore. She's ready to party. She's ready to get drunk. And Karen says, I mean, I'm not a nun, obviously. Will laughs a little. She's like, I like sex. I mean, I love it. It's just the mess that I don't like. Attachments, expectations. Graham looks at her. He's like, what? So you never want? Karen's like, what? He says, like, I mean, a life? Karen retorts, like Billy and Camilla. She laughs. She says, I want this life. I want traveling and seeing the world and playing music with my friends until I drop dead on stage. These two people standing next to each other have made their desires very clear because Karen says, I want to work, I want to travel, I want to play music with my friends, and I want to drop dead on stage. And for Graham, that is not what he considers a life. What he defines as a life is what Billy and Camilla have. She says, you mean like what Billy and Camilla have? She laughs. And Graham's kind of like, yeah, that's what I mean. So they have very different definitions of what it looks like to have a fulfilling lifestyle. Karen says, I am quite horny though. And Graham says, you're what? like, what? Excuse me? Because he's been crushing on her for a very long time now. She says, yeah, I would sleep with anybody right now. He's like, yeah, me too. It's been a minute. Because he's been pining for you. Karen says, we should just go for it, don't you think? You can see in Graham, he's like trying to keep it cool because he's not 100% sure what she's referring to yet, but there's a chance this is going to go his way. And you can see that, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. She squints a little bit. She looks out at the party. Graham's mouth is just sort of hanging open. He's alternating between looking at her eyes and her mouth. It's like, should Karen's like, yeah, I mean, why not? He's like, yeah, I mean, and so she gets up. She's going to take the action that he didn't expect she was thinking to take, and she's going to walk across the party and talk to some other guy she was smiling at. Yep, she meant something else than what he was thinking. Whoops. Good thing he kept it cool. Good thing he didn't quite out himself yet on that. Drats. She's gonna hook up with some other guy tonight. Okay. Interview Warren says it was a confusing time for everyone. All right, we're going to see a series of guys trying out to be the new Billy, new lead singers. We're going to see auditions in their garage for a whole series of people who are definitely not the next Billy Dunn. They're going to sing almost all of the song Look Me in the Eye in a montage or a collection of these people, except for the grease on the wheel part. You know that's my favorite part. That's the only thing that could make this montage better. We're going to start with a guy in a cowboy shirt. He says, set the Southern Stars, I brought the heathens peace. The next guy we're going to get is this really scruffy guy with a Las Vegas, Nevada t-shirt. He says, then I hit the bird in the bush. Oh! Someone called the police. Graham's not loving it. We're going to get a balding man in his, I don't know, 60s, maybe 70s. He's got a tie-dye shirt on. He's like, I know you don't mean it. I know you don't mean it. I know you don't. Then we're going to get a man who is what I would say is like a future Backstreet Boy, an Asian future Backstreet Boy. He's got his back to them because he's got choreography. He says, because you can't turn around, and he whips around to look at them, but his sunglasses, like the force of that knocks his sunglasses down. Then we're going to get a man with his denim shirt sleeves cut off or torn off, got a bandana. Look me in the eyes. Turn around, say it to my face. And he's going in and out of being totally flat as he's holding that last note. And we get a close up on Eddie, whose eye is just sort of twitching anytime this guy's voice goes a little bit flat. And then we're going to get a man in a leather jacket who just sort of sobs, just quietly, just a little bit. And interview Warren just laughs because what a mess. What a mess. There are no future Billy Dunns here that they've seen today. After the auditions, Karen says, I feel like we've seen every bloody frontman in the whole of California. Eddie turns and smiles. Not everyone. He's been waiting for this moment. Warren's like, what? He says, I can do it. This guy. Graham's kind of uncomfortable. He's like, yeah, Eddie, because they don't want to have to say no to their band member, to their bass player. Eddie is trying to be convincing. He's like, I can do it. I'm a better guitarist than Billy. I can sing almost as good. Come on, just give me a chance. I mean, self-awareness, how would you rate this on a self-awareness level? I mean, the fact that he understands and has called out that he doesn't sing quite as good as Billy is, or quite as well as Billy. That's okay, that's fair. Is he a better guitarist than Billy? I don't know. I haven't stacked these two up against each other. I'm sure Billy would say he's not. Warren's like, I mean, he's already up there. This is a scary moment, right? Because if Eddie isn't up to it, how do you tell him? Oh, they're reluctant, but he grabs his guitar and he's going to sing. Uh, he's going to sing a bit of Flip the Switch. He says, come on, you can't be serious, can't even take a joke. You can promise that the boat won't sink, but could you ever let it float? We heard this song, several times in the last episode, as well as Look Me in the Eye. We get to the end of it. You couldn't flip the switch then, baby. You couldn't pull the trigger. He's not Billy, but this is a possibility. And you can see it on all of their faces. It's like, I mean, okay, maybe. They've got that sort of like high-pitched maybe sort of quality to their faces. If they were speaking, that's the sound that would come out. Okay, now we're going to see what's happening with Simone. We've got lyrics on a legal pad. Up to You is the song title. She's at the studio singing a little bit. She's saying, do what you got to do, babe. She wants to go again, but we're going to see Lee Parlin in the booth. He's like, well, why don't you come here and listen to that take? I think it's about as good as it's going to get. Simone smiles. She's like, okay, as long as it's good for you. So she joins him and the engineer in the booth. The engineer gets up to fiddle with whatever recording they just did. And Lee is now sitting next to, and so it's empty armchair. Lee, Simone is standing. And so he says, well, let's listen back to it. And so he says, you got to hear this. It's magic. Cue it up, Danny. So the song starts playing. We're going to hear, this sort of like, is this a Motown vibe to it? If I can't understand, maybe I can still relate. Relay. Simone smiles. She's like, yeah, that was good. We're going to hear the song continue to play. Lee says, do you want to sit down? Because there's an empty chair right next to him. She says, yeah. So she goes to cross over him to sit down in the empty chair next to him. And instead, he physically pulls her onto his lap and puts a hand on the inside of her, just above her knee. Gross. There is no way. There is absolutely. You've seen this. I've seen this. Maybe you've experienced this. I've experienced stuff like this. That moment when somebody does something that isn't appropriate. And sometimes it's a thing that's inappropriate, but you can't even explain the inappropriateness of it because it's so nebulous. But there is a consistent reaction that you'll get from the person who's experiencing it, like a tensing up, a protecting yourself, a shrinking away. That is definitely noticeable. That is definitely noticeable to the Lee Parlins of the world. Don't even try to tell me he doesn't pick this up. He loves it. He knows it's happening. He's got the power. It's gross. I hate it. Ugh. We've been there, right? Well, I don't know. Maybe we haven't all been there. I hope you haven't all experienced a thing anywhere near this energy or weirdness in your life. But if you have, you get what Simone's dealing with right now. And you can once again see the many different thoughts that are going through her brain because this guy seems to be a big deal, like in terms of reputation in the industry and ability to give opportunities or take them away. He has definitely made this inappropriate, or he has taken it to a place she definitely does not want to go. But to what degree is the professional opportunity attached to how she handles this moment is the question she's trying to figure out. So the way she's handling this is like, I'm not going to say a masterclass. I'm going to say it's like a textbook. This is how you know she's trying to protect every single thing about herself. Um, so he pulls her on top of him. He's now nodding to the music. He's like, "Ooh, sounds like honey." She's awkward. She's like, "Thank you." He slides his hand further up the inside of her leg, and she very quickly stands up. He he hits a point of no return. She says, "Nah." She gets up. It's an instinct. She couldn't have undone that instinct if she wanted to, I don't think. She just needed to remove herself from the dangerous situation that she was in. And now she's going to deal with the repercussions of that in some way. She's going to try to soften it though. And Danny comes back anyway. The sound engineer comes back. He's like, "You feeling okay?" Just, sort of smoothing it over. She says, "Yeah, I can hear myself better over here." What an interesting excuse to give. It's like, I'm not going to say anything about your behavior. Sort of, this is definitely because of your behavior, but I'm not going to say anything about your behavior because I want this connection, this professional connection to work. I can hear myself better over here. Definitely not it. But hey, it's a saving face kind of an answer. He nods but flinches. He knows what he's not going to get from this person in the future. The next lyric we hear is "Do what you gotta do." I mean, fair enough, right? Simone gets back home that night. She unlocks the apartment door. She can hear Daisy singing. When we open the door, Daisy is on the floor. She's kind of got things spread out in front of her. She's um so on the floor in the living room with the guitar, she's humming. And what she is humming, it'll become clearer as you get to the end of the scene. It's actually a version of The River, a song that will become a Daisy Jones and the Six song later. I don't feel like it's a spoiler to say this. It's a song that's going to become more meaningful as the show goes on. I don't think that it's meant to be a song that we're supposed to attribute to being Daisy's creation. I think it's just a little, if you watch it back, it's a little nod to the audience who knows the show. But I don't think this is meant to be something that we recognize so clearly that we're like, "Oh, that was Daisy's song." I think it's just like a fun, oh, it's like a little hint of what's going to be the river. Because she's really just humming it at this point. Simone's got her arms crossed and Daisy's concerned. Simone's like, "Oh, that sounds nice." Daisy says, "Are you okay?" Simone's like, "Yeah," but she just goes to her room. Because that's what this stuff does. It makes you go all the way internal. It's like, maybe the best possible thing for Simone to do here therapeutically would be to sit down with Daisy and tell her exactly what happened. And Daisy could say all the things that a friend would say, like, "You didn't deserve that. This shouldn't have happened. Here's what you can do," or "I get it," or "I like," there are things that a friend can say to support you. And Simone feels so gross that she can't even have any of that. She just goes into her room. We're going to go to Billy and Camilla's room now. Camilla's playing with Julia on the floor. Julia's cooing. Billy comes in, he sits down on the bed, and he's like, "Let's go home to Pittsburgh." Camilla loses her smile. She's like, "This man is all the way focused on himself." Ugh. Billy says, "We'd be closer to your parents, to my mom. I can get a construction job. I like building things, working with my hands. You could get a job at the paper, taking pictures." He's thought through all of this. He's got the safe way out already organized here. She's a little pissed. She says, "Do you think that I moved here for you?" He's a little confused. She says, "Because I didn't. I moved here with you, Billy. For us. All right. For the life we wanted." He says, "I'm just trying to be practical, Cam. All right. If I stay here," she's like, "Oh my God." She covers her eyes. But this is, "I don't know if I can handle it here anymore." She says, "That's not the problem." He says, "You're not listening to me. I'm weak." She gets exasperated. She says, "Pick up your kid, Billy. Go ahead. Pick up your daughter. Like, what are you so afraid of? Do you think that I wasn't scared when I held her for the first time and you weren't even there?" His face is frozen looking at her. She's going there. He has pushed her. She's done with him making decisions for them. She says, "You think I wasn't so hurt when you," he looks down. She's like, "But I stayed, Billy. I faced it and I didn't leave." He can't look at her. She's like, "So I'm asking, what are you so afraid of?" He says, "I think I'm afraid that she's gonna love me and I'm gonna mess it all up." She says, "Welcome to the club." It's like, everybody's afraid of that, Billy. Um, it's so tricky, right? Because Camilla doesn't have a substance abuse situation. Like she doesn't have an addiction of her own here that she's dealing with. And so for her, practically speaking, it's like, I'm afraid of the exact things that you are, but here I am facing them. Like, don't talk to me like I don't get it. I get it. But for him, the repercussions are a different thing altogether. And, there's a lot of shame that's building up inside of him along the way, and that's compounding things. I find this a really interesting conversation. And before I look at the montage that we're about to get, I want to stop down on this conversation a little bit more. Not that I ever left it. Um, this idea that, well, first of all, the idea of leaving or staying, because she stayed in the hospital. She stayed at home while he was on tour. She's been staying every time he made a choice to leave. And now he's saying, let's leave together. Like, that's a solution. Like, maybe that's the thing we haven't tried. Both of us leaving. She's saying, well, what if we try both of us staying? Like, what if we did that? Because I don't want to go. What I do think is something that I'm questioning here is the self-awareness from her around um like why she moved out there to begin with. She says, "Do you think I moved here for you? Because I didn't. I moved here with you, Billy. I'm she, for the life we wanted." I'm not totally sure that's true. Billy made a decision to move and didn't consult her on that because he had just come off of this conversation with Rod. He got the whole band around him. They all said, "Let's move to California." And then she walked in on that conversation. He wasn't even like the third person he told. Like there were a number of people who knew about this move before he ever brought it up to her, and he didn't bring it up to her. She walked in on the conversation. So, like, he had made a decision to move. This wasn't to move with her for him. This was, "I'm moving to California." She came. They had a fight. They had a fight about it. She went in, she had a conversation with her mom, and then she decided she was going to move with Billy. She, in her head, has decided that it was a move with Billy, but he made the entire choice without her. He was prepared to do this without her. I think he would have been okay without her in his mind. He had already accepted that outcome. If not, you do this whole thing in a very different order. Um, but this idea that I moved here with you for the life we wanted, like there are very few things about the way their life looks right now that I think were the picture that he had in his head when he had that first conversation with Rod. Um, and so I don't know how he's reconciling that, you know. Um, she I don't know professionally what she's got going on right now, given that she spends so much time taking care of Julia. Um, getting a job at the paper, taking pictures, maybe more of a profession than she has at this particular moment, but she was applying to stuff before she got pregnant. So I don't know. I'm just, it's Camilla's interesting to me in the way that like she's she's sort of is it fair to say she's opposite of Simone? Because Simone has so many thoughts going through her head, and then we sort of decide what we think those are. Camilla says things and she sounds really confident when she says them, and she sounds like she's had like epiphanies and she's schooling other people, but occasionally I'm not sure if she's assessed them correctly. And this is one of those moments. Um, so Billy saying, let's move back to Pittsburgh, I'll get a construction, like he's worked out the whole thing in his head, and he's considered her far more than he did for the move to get to California. But it shouldn't be a surprise that Billy is completely focused on his own decision-making process because he's been that way for the whole show. And Camilla's pushing back because that's the way she wants to deal with him here. And so at the end of all of it, she's like, look, running away together, you and me, means we still have Julia and you will still be not picking up your kid. So fix that problem. Um, like pick up your kid. She gets to the heart of the matter. She doesn't all the way deal head on with like how abandoned she felt in the hospital. She dances around a little bit. She doesn't finish sentences, but we're talking about that still in this conversation. So Billy, I like the way they edited this. Billy um finally looks down at Julia. He gets on the floor next to her. He picks her up for the first time. And then we're going to get this series of cuts too. Things edited together, different scenes of him holding her. So he picks her up for the first time, and then we're going to cut to him sitting with her in a rocking chair at night. We're going to cut to him standing with her, rocking her, bouncing her. We're going to cut to him doing some home repair while Camilla plays with Julian next to him. So we get Camilla involved in that. We're going to cut to him lying back on a sofa with Julia sort of up on his legs, and he's kissing the bottoms of her feet. And then we're going to cut back to him holding her for the first time. And Camilla smiles as she's looking at them. And I like the way they did that because it's a montage of this moment unlocked the whole future of him having these tactile experiences with his daughter. We only need to see a glimpse of that to know that this was a healing moment that he needed, and that Camilla seeing this and smiling is a healing moment for her. And then we're going to cut to Camilla and Billy in bed at night, and she touches him and they kiss. And so they're having their first like nurturing experience between themselves as well since he came back. All right, so we're going to see now who else kind of wished this was his life. Eddie. Eddie is now sitting with Camilla as she plays with Julia outside. And Camilla's saying, Eddie, you don't have to sit here with us. You can go back in. He's like, I want to. I miss hanging out with this little troublemaker. And you, is what he means, but doesn't say. We're going to hear a car door shut. And Billy comes up. He's going to see Camilla. He's going to see Eddie. He smiles at Camilla. He doesn't really address Eddie at all. And he keeps walking. Eddie doesn't want to let this go. He clears his throat. He's like, so everything's just back to normal with you guys? I mean, just like that. Camilla's smile fades. Eddie's like, sorry, I don't know how you could. Camilla just says, have you ever been in love before, Eddie? He looks at her and then looks away like, yes, with you. She says, you don't just stop loving somebody because things get hard, you know? She says, at least I don't. And he looks at her. I mean, Eddie is just so unimpressed with all of the choices that Billy makes. He thinks the world of Camilla. He would never do a thing like this to Camilla. And here's Billy squandering everything he's got. This woman, their beautiful baby, the whole band. Like, what a fool, that Billy. But he is managing to keep it very restrained. The problem, though, is that this restraint, you can see it in future interview Eddie. He's so bitter. He's like, he's got an axe to grind. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got all the things. even the older version of him that maybe has lived more life and had more experiences still seems to feel this way. Okay, we're going to go to Christmas time and we're going to get the whole gang celebrating Christmas. We're going to hear One Happy Christmas by Tammy Wynette. The house is all decorated. Camilla's going to get some, she's going to grab her camera. She's going to get some video footage. We're going to see Warren putting up a stocking. We're going to see Billy holding Julia. Grandma's smiling. Karen's shaking some tinsel at her, being a cool aunt. Uh, Billy turns the camera. He turns to the camera and he says to Julia, "Say Merry Christmas, Mama." So, at this point, he's had a long amount of time now where he's been holding his daughter and interacting with her. So I think we're kind of in a good place here. So his recovery, his healing in all the ways he needs to heal. He's pretty far along into his process now. We are going to see footage of gift giving and drinking, and Billy is not in those shots for the most part. Karen's going to go 1, 2, 3, Pittsburgh. They all toast and drink, but Billy's not there. He comes in after that because he was putting Julia to bed. So we're going to, after that last toast, Billy comes in and we're not getting Camilla's footage anymore. We're just we're shooting directly from the camera to the group. Billy says, well, it took forever, but she's finally asleep. They all cheer. Taryn's saying, "Come have some fun." Billy's like, "Well, I'd like to play something for you all if you're open to it." And again, I love the blocking here. Billy's standing, asking, "Can I play something for you?" You know that is, can I reintegrate myself? We've got Camilla, Karen, Graham, and Warren all piled onto one couch, sitting tightly next to each other. They're like, Eddie is splayed out on this one. What do you call those chairs? Like the big sort of leaning circle. It's an armchair, but it's not an armchair. It's not a futon. What is that? He's just taken up the whole thing by himself. He's got a cigarette dangling out of his mouth. He's been the king of the castle. He says, "We're not interested." Everybody else turns their heads to look at him. He's like, "Well, we're not, right, guys?" I mean, and Billy's just like, kind of like eating crow, letting Eddie look bad. I'm not sure which is the bigger factor here. Eddie's like, "Come on, you can't do this. You can't just walk back in here like nothing happened." Billy says, "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm going to go check on Julia. This is weird. This is awkward." I think there's more to be accomplished by Eddie letting Eddie look like a jerk in front of everybody than by Billy continuing to stand his ground here. And, how effective is that really? He did leave all these guys in the lurch. So this is a situation where it's probably better to let the 4 people on the couch together do the talking to Eddie for you. And he gets that. So the band looks back at Eddie as Billy's starting to walk out. Eddie's like, "Okay, like play the damn song." The interviewer says to him, "Why did you stay?" And he says, "I ask myself that all the time." I mean, the interviewer knows what kind of energy she's getting from Eddie at this particular moment that she's been hearing from the whole interview. This is a man with an axe to grind and a chip on his shoulder. Okay. We're going to get what song did Billy play? Well, we're going to hear it in Teddy's office. We're going to get a close up of Teddy. He's listening to the recording Billy made of his song. And we hear some lyrics. "Oh, but I know we can get it all back. I know we can get it all back." Teddy turns it off. There surely was more of the song than that. Billy's like, "What's the matter?" Teddy stands up. He walks around the desk. I don't think these are the actions of a man who loves it. We kind of have a sense of what it looks like when Teddy feels really proud of himself or like he really nailed it. We see that by the end of this episode. We haven't seen it here. We didn't see it with Daisy's song either, as far as I'm concerned. Billy says, "I mean, I know it's a new direction, but are you telling me it's not a good song?" Teddy's like, "It's a good song, but not a great one." Billy shrugs, like, "So?" Teddy sits down on the edge of his desk next to Billy. He says, "You burned a lot of bridges when you canceled that tour, man. You burned a lot of bridges and a lot of money that wasn't yours. And yeah, the song is good, but there's a lot more people with your sound now." I mean, look, this is the conversation. This is the business conversation that maybe Billy thought he was going to have with Teddy the first time Teddy came back to his house after rehab. This is some of the honest truth. But uh, if we keep going, Billy says, let me talk to the label. Teddy says, it's not going to help. Billy says, well, then you talk to him. And now he's getting more heated. He's trying to fight for this. He says, you're Teddy Price. They'll listen to you. Teddy stands. He says, look, your fuck up is my fuck up. All right. Billy absorbs that. He says, I thought yours was going to be the record to fix things, but it didn't. It just didn't, Billy. Teddy sits back down behind his desk. Billy doesn't know. Teddy has shielded Billy from the context that Teddy had had, what, six flops in a row in terms of albums that he had gone to bat for with the label. And when he pushed for the six, when he pushed for the Dunn brothers, there was an expectation that this needed to be the one that hit. And then when Billy squandered things the way that he did, when Billy fell apart the way that he did, this was now number seven, right? So it it was a big problem. He's lost a lot of credibility with the label. So Billy thinking you're Teddy Price and you have all the power in the world, he doesn't realize that Teddy is actually in a very vulnerable position in terms of his reputation at this moment with the label. And there's if Teddy doesn't feel fully confident in this product, he can't push this to the label in the way that he would have before. Um, and he's revealing this a little bit now to Billy. It's like, look, I'm going to be honest with you, man, a little bit. Like, I'm going to give you some of this. You're a father now. You know what responsibility looks like. Let me tell you. Like I like that he is just giving a little glimpse of this to Billy. And I like in this episode that Billy responds anytime Teddy gives him a little bit of that. This conversation and the one in the closet later, I like that these moments where Teddy's like, I'm here's an honest tidbit for you, man. And Billy, I think, generally takes that and uses it correctly, um, and in a respectful way to Teddy. So he's got a little bit of this information. Teddy said, all right, look, I'm going to try it. I'm going to play it for them. We'll see what they say. Billy's leg is bouncing a little bit. He's got a nervous energy. He says, thank you. But if Teddy feels like this, I don't know how good he feels about it. We're now going to go from here to the label office with the suits. We're going to start in the hallway of this office with all the records, not the records, all of the awards that they've won along the walls, decorating the walls. We hear Billy's song playing. We start in the hallway with those awards, and then we go into the conference room. We're going to see a whole bunch of suits at the table. Don's at the head of the table. We're hearing lyrics like, we're both getting older. You tell me, you tell me, you tell me. I've seen the dark skies. Did we unravel a long time ago? Is there too much we don't want to know? The guys are lukewarm about it. Teddy's encouraging. He's trying to raise the energy in the room. He says, this is just the demo, you know? Don says, I'm not hearing it, Teddy. And the guy next to him, he turns to him. He says, are you hearing it? The guy says, I'm not hearing it either. Don says, yeah, we've already given these guys a shot. Teddy says, look, Don, I have a feeling. Don scoffs at this. It's like, your feelings really right now? Because you've had six flops in a row, man. Teddy says, if you just let me in a room with them, I can work some magic. We can. Don says, it's a no on this one. Okay, Teddy? Sorry. All right, what else have we got, guys? And somebody who is ready with the next demo to pull out. He says, I found a great band in the Midwest. Real new sound. They put in the next tape. Billy's chance is done. Almost. Because we're going to see Daisy sitting with Teddy. It's been a week. She promised him a whole album full of songs in a week, and she just has not been able to deliver. She really struggled to come up with songs, and she's never had to work at a pace like this. She had a whole lifetime, or a lot of years to write the songs that she had written, the fragments of songs. Then she spent all this time on the one song that she put on a bow and sent to Teddy. And, to do a whole bunch of other really good songs in a week is a pace she's never worked at before. So Daisy's sitting with Teddy. She's on one couch across from him. And she's being really honest with him. She says, I have about 15 pieces of different ideas, but nothing I think you're going to like yet. And he responds to her honesty. He says, well, please don't bother bringing me anything you don't think is great. She says, I wouldn't, but what if it takes a long time? The songs, they just show up when they show up. You know, it's one of the early moments with Daisy and Teddy where she's like taken down she doesn't have that like, what do I need you for energy in this conversation. She has you know, this is kind of hard. I didn't get it done. I think this is a real hit to her. And Teddy receives it and says, thank you for telling me what's happening. He says, yeah, I can wait. Like, don't give me something that's not good in your eyes. I can wait for the good stuff. So it's sort of releasing her, taking some of that pressure off, which is probably his best bet here. He's kind of like a psychological genius. He knows how to deal with different people and get the best out of them, I'm finding. We see it a lot in this episode. We see it in this conversation. We see it in the last conversation with Billy. But here we've got Billy's demo playing in the background. Teddy's still listening to it, processing it. And in this conversation, Daisy's hearing it. She's like, what is that? She can't stop hearing this song and thinking about it. So we get to the lyrics, did we unravel a long time ago? Is there too much? And so the lyrics are continuing. Oh, I know we can get it all back. She's like, what is this song? He says, I thought it was something, but he sees that she's really thinking about it. It's getting her creative ideas flowing. He says, what would you do with it? And now he has invited her to start thinking about it and rewriting it in a way. So she's really thinking now. And we're going to see interview Karen say, next thing you know, we're booked in the studio. We're going to see Daisy working on the song. She's humming, she's writing in her journal, she's getting all these ideas. It feels to us more productive than when she was writing songs before, where she was really frustrated. She was throwing the journal. Now she seems to be getting somewhere. Interview Warren says Teddy thought a female vocalist would give us an edge. Interview Karen says someone new that he was working with. We're going to see Daisy singing and writing at the same time. Now, where do we stand? Interview Eddie says we'd never heard of her then. I mean, no one had. Interview Graham says Billy wasn't thrilled. Of course, Graham's focused on Billy. Now we're going to see Billy and Teddy in the studio, because how not thrilled was Billy? Well, Billy's saying, I don't even know why we're doing this. It's not a duet. Daisy enters the studio for the first time. She's got a long white button-down shirt with stripes, and it's so long it covers the very short shorts she's wearing, so you can't be totally sure she's wearing pants at all. And she's got big hoop earrings on. She needs to talk with Rod. That man can rock a robe and maybe no pants also. Daisy says hi. Teddy introduces them. Daisy Jones, Billy Dunn. Billy rubs his eyes like, oh, I can't handle this. Daisy smiles at him. I like your song. That catches him off guard. He's speechless. He doesn't know what to do. He's been fighting this, and she's like, you're awesome. Interview Billy kind of chuckles. She just keeps catching him off balance throughout this session. Interview Daisy shakes her head and smiles. I think it's so interesting, this first meeting, because these two really it wasn't exactly set up for success in the way that like Billy didn't know she had rewritten the song. If he did know that, he might not have showed up today. He might have fought it kicking and screaming and not come in at all. So maybe Teddy needed it to play out exactly this way for things to go even halfway decently. But yeah, like Billy is going to be caught off guard. He doesn't have any of the real information about what's happening in this room right now. Daisy shows up in this room, and we have seen that Daisy is vocal and she'll say what she thinks, and she'll maybe say too much sometimes. But in this situation, she thought Billy had the rewrites and had agreed to do this recording with her, is my understanding of this. So she comes in here caught off guard that he's not okay with this. And they both still have to be in this room together. So we're back in the studio here. Teddy is giving instructions. Tobias, the sound engineer, he's standing at the ready. The band is in the room except for Billy, and they're all standing behind Daisy. And Teddy is like, all right, Daisy, you're going to go right here. Tobias is going to set you up. And she starts making requests. She's like, "Could I get a glass of milk and a whiskey, or just a whiskey if you don't have milk, or just a milk if you don't have whiskey?" And Tobias is taking notes, so he's going to go fetch some things for her to make sure she has what she needs. I love that they have this touch here. I think that a lot of times when you're new to a space, my experience a lot of times when I'm new to a space, and I often find this to be true of a lot of people, is like when you're new to a space, maybe you kind of hang back, you're a little quieter, you don't know what you can and can't ask for. The fact that she even knew she could ask for anything in this room is astonishing to me. Um, and she puts it out there. It's not demanding, but the fact that it's like the energy you would have if you had been in a studio several times before, um, that she was able to bring that level of like, I know that there are people here who are meant to get me the things I need, and so I'm going to ask for some things that I need. It doesn't feel like too much to me, but the fact that she is asking it all feels like a thing I kind of wish that I could sometimes do in certain situations where you can just sort of put it out there and not have to be a complete newbie in a space every single time you show up. So Teddy is going to leave the room. He's going to join Billy on the other side of the glass. We're going to hear the band talking to Daisy. Karen saying, "So happy to see you." They're all greeting her. Billy says to Teddy, "Why are you smiling?" Teddy's like, "I'm just generally delighted." And Billy turns, he goes into the room with the band. He says, "Okay, let's do this." The rest of the band, they're going to leave to watch. He puts on his headphones. She watches and she does the same thing because she's just figuring it out. She's watching what he's doing. He says, "Do you want to talk about the song first?" And she says, "No, I'm fine unless you have something you want." He says, "No, I'm fine." She's a little taken aback. It's like, oh, okay. Maybe this wasn't cleared with him. She's getting hints of this. Tobias comes in with the whiskey and the milk. He says, "There, Prost." He clinks the glasses together, gives them both to her. She says, "Thanks." He shows her the deal. He shows her where her volume buttons are. Billy is adjusting his mic, taking care of himself. Daisy says, "Okay, so this one," and the band is watching this. They're like, "Wait, has she ever recorded before?" Um, and she's testing this sound to see what it sounds like in her ears. He's like, "Hello, hello." Warren's like, "Well, I don't know if she's recorded before, but she's about to." Daisy's pointing to the lights. "Can we lower those or turn them off? Like, what can we do here?" She's getting a sense of this space. I'm really impressed by how much she sort of owned the space to make sure she was creating her best possible conditions. Because it's not too much. There's this, in fact, somebody there who's supposed to be helping her be ready for this. Um, I feel like so many people, and for sure me, like you come away from your first day and be like, "Oh my God, I could have asked for this and this and this." Like, but instead you suffer like through not optimal conditions to get the thing done and not be a complainer. And then you're like, "Oh, I could have just asked for this thing and it wouldn't have been a big deal." She kind of already knows that somehow. Eddie's like, "Yeah, where are her pants?" Warren's like, "Who cares?" Graham giggles. Karen's like, "Shut up, you children." Okay, we're gonna get Teddy back at the controls. He says he asked for them to give the levels. Billy's gonna sing and "I Don't Know Who I Am." Teddy gets one from Daisy. She says, "Baby, baby, baby. Time to go. Let's hit record on this thing. This is Honeycomb, take one." They hit record. And we're gonna hear the instrumental track going through the headphones. I haven't been in a studio to record before, so I think it's interesting to see. So that I guess the headphones are playing the sound through their ears so it doesn't pick it up on the mic. And then she can hear his vocals and hers. I don't know if she can hear his at all, or she's just watching him. Um, that part I'm not really sure how much she is hearing there. It sounds like they can switch to different voices, but can she hear both of them at the same time? I'm not sure. Technical question. If anybody happens to know, I'd love your thoughts on that. So Daisy's watching Billy. She then sees the band watching them and she starts to get really self-conscious. So he starts to sing, "I Don't Know Who I Am." She takes off her headphones. She taps his shoulder. She can't deal with the audience. She's like, do we need to have them here?" He's like, "The band?" They're a little taken aback by that. They're like, "It's our song." Daisy says to Billy, "It's just, they're looking right at me. It's just weird. She doesn't know them. It's a big audience for her right now." Karen is going to be very delicate about this. She says, "Let's just give her some space. Hey, maybe you want to go talk to Deb out there, the person, Is she an assistant? She's the admin who runs or who works at the studio, maybe. And that gets the guys really excited. Brian's like, Debbie's working today? And they all run out. But Karen stays. She locks them out of the room. Karen's going to stay in because she wants to stay and watch Billy and Daisy. Daisy says, okay, honeycomb, take two. Billy's like, oh, take two already. Oh, no. This is going to take forever. Karen smiles at Daisy. Daisy smiles back. Karen can get things done. And Billy starts singing, I don't know who I am, baby, baby, baby. Do you know who you are? Is it out of our hands? Tell me, tell me, tell me how we made it this far. They both sing together. Did we unravel a long time ago? Is there too much we don't want to know? I wish it was easy, but it isn't so. Um, Karen is in the room. She can hear this. She hears what Teddy is hearing. She turns back to him. She's like, oh my gosh, this guy knew what he was talking about. There's something here. It's rough, it's new, but it's something that sounds like it has a lot of potential, even to Karen, who's hearing it for the first time. Um, a grammar issue. I wish it was easy, but it isn't so. It should be, I wish it were easy. This particular grammatical mistake always gets me. I had a Spanish teacher who really enforced the subjunctive mood with us, and every time it gets me. Anyway, they get past I wish it was easy, but it isn't. So they get to oh, and here's where they start singing different lyrics from each other. Billy says, I know we can get it all back. Daisy says, we can make a good thing bad. Totally different concepts. They say, oh, again, and you can hear, they can tell that they're not singing the same thing. They're a little like, what is this? And then they go, oh, and they repeat the same thing. Billy says, I know we can get it all back. Daisy says, we can make a good thing bad. Totally different ideas. They're both confused. Honest confusion from them because Teddy pulled one over on them. Billy's like, wait. Those aren't the lyrics. Do you need me to write them down? Can I get a pen? He's like, I know what the lyrics are. She grabs her book. He says, well, why aren't you singing them? She says, I am singing them. She gives him the book. She says, you didn't see that. She turns to Teddy. He didn't see these. She did think that he saw them. Teddy just let her think that because he needed to get them both in the room. Billy's like, what on earth? Like, what is happening here, Teddy? Now he's kind of annoyed with Teddy. Teddy's like, why don't we give her version a go and just see how it sings? We're here already. Might as well. Billy says her version's a completely different song, Teddy. And to be fair, it is. The difference between I know we can get it all back and we can make a good thing bad are the opposite. He's saying, Camilla, we can be okay again. She's saying, we can make this even worse. It's like he's been really trying very hard to limit all of the temptations in his life and to stay on the straight and narrow to convince himself and Camilla that that this thing can work. And here's Daisy saying we can make it worse. So Billy's like, her version's like a completely different song, Teddy. Daisy says, can I ask you a question? He whips his head to look at her. He was angry with Teddy, but now maybe he can be angry with her. We'll see. She takes her journal back. She says, what do you think this song's about? What do I think the song is about? What the song that I wrote? What do I think the song that I wrote is about? She says, yeah, what is it about? Like ignoring the intensity of the question. But she's looking at him intently, and he says, it's about starting a new life, Daisy. She's okay. He says, it's about redemption. She says, redemption from what? He says, from letting people down. She looks out at Teddy for a second. She's like, so it's guilt. It's about guilt. He says, it's not about guilt. She's, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to pry or anything. I'm just trying to get us on the same page, make sure I understand the story so I can help out. I think that's why I'm here, right? I'm assuming this is about you. Oh my goodness. I mean, these are so I'll keep going here for a second and then revisit it. Billy scoffs. He looks out at Teddy. She says, okay, so you let somebody down, right? And now you're saying everything's fine. Look at us. Everything's in the past. He says, yeah, what's wrong with that? She says, I don't believe it. And it doesn't sound honest. And it sounds simple. And I don't know you very well, but you don't seem simple to me. And they look at each other. And it's like they're staring into each other's souls. He says, well, thank you, in a way that's not meant to be thank you. Um, I'm trying to decide how far to. Oh, there's just a little bit more of this. I want to come back and revisit this dialogue. She says, "Okay, why did you call it honeycomb, by the way? Like, it's that's a Ricky Nelson song, right?" Karen scrunches her face at this point. She looks back at Teddy. She's like, "Is she always like this?" The corners of Teddy's mouth turn up a little bit because she is always like this. This is the woman who walked away from Teddy the very first time she met him. When Billy ran towards him, Billy says, if you don't like the song, why are you here? She says, I love the song. I love it. I think it's beautiful. It's just that you wrote a speech when at the very least, I think it can be a conversation. Billy takes off his headphones and he leaves the room. Daisy sighs. She's going to give one of these gestures to Teddy. What just happened? If I really look at this, I mean, this is a real, it's like a confrontation between Billy and Daisy. It's a confrontation between Teddy and both of them by way of each other. And it's a confrontation of Billy to himself because I don't necessarily think anybody's holding a mirror up to Daisy in this situation, but this is a very vulnerable moment for Billy. He's written this song. He's in a really tenuous situation in his relationship and in his own mental health and in his own self-confidence and in his own addiction battle. And he writes this song that was the version of him he wanted to be. And Daisy comes in for 1 second, this person he's never met, and said, I literally don't think this is you. And he knows it's not. And that to me is the look that they exchange when she says something like that, right? Like, you don't seem simple to me. This is a simple song. And he's like, I'm busted. And she sees it right away. And it was something Teddy maybe was seeing, but didn't want to say it or didn't know how to articulate it. And here's Daisy coming in saying whatever she thinks. And to be fair, she was given this task to do by Teddy. She thought she had been cleared with Billy for her to come in and do a duet with him. She thought he already knew the lyrics she had written down. She didn't expect the fight that she's having right now. She was coming in ready to lay down some tracks and have a good time. And she sees this song so clearly. She sees what Billy's actually trying to say versus what he means so clearly. And it's shocking to Billy that she can see it that clearly. And he's resisting it because he wants to be saying the thing that he wrote. It's so fascinating to me, like how this, like, I don't fault either Billy or Daisy for being resistant in this conversation. Because I think that if Teddy had been able to find a way where he could have said, this is why we need to do this way to both of them, then maybe this would have been a smoother experience. I just don't know if he would have actually gotten them in the room if he had told them what was happening up front. So it's tricky, right? He got them to work it out themselves and get to the same place, maybe. Um, so now Daisy's holding up to him these lyrics that may be more true to what he's really feeling, possibly. And he has to reckon with that. And, you know, with Daisy, I think we still haven't really held up the mirror for her, I don't think. Um, so that's still to be done here. But this is a lot for Billy to take in this room. So he storms out. He storms out of the room. And we are going to get him. We're going to go back to the studio lobby for a second. The guys, the band, they're all watching All in the Family with Debbie. And we're going to get Teddy and Tobias and Karen. They come in to join them. Billy storms in. He's like, what the hell, man? Teddy, like, is something on your mind? He's like, I'm either going to kill her or you or myself. Where do you think I should start? He's so hot right now. Daisy comes in because nobody else is in the studio. So why not come out where everybody else is? Billy holds up a hand to her. He's like, we need a minute. Thanks. She's like, Billy says, Teddy, can we, he points to another room. Like, let's take this to another space. Daisy says to Teddy, is this the part where the men figure out the solution? Teddy says, I highly doubt it. Well said, Daisy. Billy, this cracks me up. Billy is so heated and he doesn't really know the space. He opens up the door he had pointed to and he's in this tiny little room. The camera is inside the room already. It's a dark, small room. He doesn't know where the lights are. He's like, what the? Teddy's in the hallway. He says, close the door, come in. Teddy's like, can I turn the light on? Teddy's like, yes. Teddy comes in. They're in a closet. Billy didn't know the space. He doesn't know his surroundings. We're going to see this in more than one way. But here he is in this room. It's a tiny little closet, which is really unfortunate because Billy wants to pace. He has really angry energy right now, and he needs to be able to walk and let his aggression out a little bit through pacing, but he has nowhere to go because they're in a tiny little closet. Teddy's like, "What are we doing in the closet, man?" Billy says, "I didn't know what was in here. I thought it was just another room. You had her rewrite the song?" This is the correct placement of this question. He only was questioning Daisy a second ago, but Teddy orchestrated this. Teddy's like, okay, what did you think of this sound? Billy says, she sounds like she's ruining the great fucking song I wrote, Teddy. He's got, he's right on the edge of a tantrum. It's all over his face. Teddy says, no, Billy, you wrote a good song, but not a great one. Billy's kind of hurt at that. Teddy's giving him some tough love right now. Daisy kind of broke the seal on the tough love, and Teddy's gonna give him the rest of it now. Teddy says, she's right, man. Your version is simple. Billy scoffs, but the truth is the truth, huh? He says, you're holding back, and I get it. If I was you, I wouldn't want to be going to those places either. Billy says, look, I don't get it. If the label loved the song, Teddy says they didn't. See, this is once again, this is where when Teddy gets honest with Billy, when he tells him the responsibilities that he's been dealing with, Billy can rise to the occasion. Teddy says the label said no. They don't know we're here. Billy says, so who is paying for this session? Teddy says, I love you, man. You know that, don't you? Billy's not going to fight him anymore on this. Teddy is running this experiment on his own dime because he believes in something here. Nobody is footing the bill for this except for Teddy. And that makes Billy stop. And he leans up against the store shelves and he's doing absolutely everything he can to swallow his pride here and it's not just pride. Like, there's some serious coping mechanisms happening when you take away a song that was masking how you feel and you turn into one that was showing how you feel and you're doing it against your own wishes. That's got to be really vulnerable, right? And he's trying to absorb this because Teddy is doing this for him. Teddy leaves the room. Billy's processing it. We're gonna get Warren and Eddie conferring. They're just batting it back and forth. Eddie's like, I don't know. First we let him back in like it's nothing. Now he's got us singing along with some chick or singing songs with some chick. Karen can hear this. She perks up. She says, who are you calling chick? I'm a chick. She leans back on the couch, like, don't you even. Eddie says, yeah, but not really. Okay. Teddy is walking back from his conversation with Billy to join the rest of the group. He says to Eddie and Warren, like, again, master manipulator, this Teddy. He says to Eddie and Warren, Tweedledee, Tweedledum, heartbeat of the track. Good work. He sort of points to them both. That's all they needed. I bet Teddy has learned to do this with every bassist and or every bass player and every drummer in every band that he ever worked with. Like, he finds the people who are not the lead singer or who don't have like the I'm in charge energy. And he just says, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, heartbeat of the track, good work. And these two light up. They went from complaining to being like, glad you dig it, man. That was really nice. I'm glad people are listening. I'm glad they're hearing us. The way he changed their mood with just one acknowledgement, and it's not that hard for him to do, and he's learned to take the time to do it. This feels like a Teddy patented technique here. All right, we're going to go back into the studio. Teddy and Tobias and Graham are all in that viewing area. Billy enters. Graham's like, you all right? Billy says, yep, yeah. Daisy enters the recording area. Maybe we're starting to get back into it. She picks up the headphones. She calls out, did you guys want to record something or fight more? I'm fine either way. I love it. She's just, it's so great. It's just this comedy that She's not trying to be comedic, but it just reads that way to me. Okay, so Teddy's like, hold on, he'll be right there. Daisy's like, I'll be here. Billy lights a cigarette. He needs a second. He wants to just have sort of one last fight with with Teddy. It'll be futile, but that's okay. He wants to make it known that he doesn't feel good about this. So we're going to get a little overlapping dialogue because Daisy's going to be doing a sound check with Tobias just to sort of mess with Billy, maybe, or just like, can we just get some things done here? Um, so Daisy's like, hello, hello, Tobias. Hello, Tobias. Billy says, what the fuck is it, Tobias? Tobias says, I'm Tobias. Tobias is the human you were introduced to at the start of this session. The whole band was introduced to Tobias. Billy might not have been in the room, but it's kind of on Billy to be like, who is the other person here? The only other person I don't know who's like in charge of all the buttons. Who's that guy? The one that's getting everything for us. Billy didn't take a minute to find that out. Here's Daisy, like having like a real conversation with him. And if anything, to maybe it's easier in that way because Daisy doesn't know the band, and Tobias is also the only person who's kind of solo there. They both have a connection to Teddy, but not to the band itself. So maybe it is easier for her to connect with Tobias in that way. But she's taking time to talk with the sound engineer in the room, and Billy has not. He doesn't even know what his name is, even though they were all introduced to him. So Tobias is like, I'm Tobias. Billy's like, oops. Whoops. So Daisy's going to do some testing. Testing one, two, three, four. Billy's saying, look, Teddy, I trust you, but I don't think you're right about this. It's overlapping. Teddy says, well, I guess we're just going to have to wait to find out. We're going to get some more overlapping. Billy's like, okay. Meanwhile, Daisy just starts doing a sound check in German. She says, klappe zu, Appetit, which I've looked up the translation of this. The direct translation seems to be something like close the lid, the monkey's dead, but I guess it's like an end of story. That's it. Like it's an expression that's just like, and that's the end of it. I don't know. I don't even know if I've translated that correctly, but I'm just looking at what I've been finding. And so she's, speaking to him in the language because he had done a cheers to her in German, and so she, gave that back to him, and she's like having this conversation in his language, and I mean, she's making a lot of steps. She's trying. Tobias is laughing. She's still sound checking. Billy finally joins Daisy. We're gonna get down to work now. Tobias approves. Like she has a perverse sense of humor. Teddy is going to just, push Billy even further here. He says, Billy, there's a rattle in your mic, so we're going to put you two together. Billy is once again caught off guard, speechless. Daisy jumps back onto her mic real quick. She says, perfect. She's ready. She's ready, coach. Put her in. Teddy sits and Tobias says, there's no rattle. Teddy says, I know. Tobias says, you also have a perverse sense of humor. He smiles. I mean, they're pushing Billy to his absolute limit. I do feel bad for Billy. I mean, look, we've seen a couple episodes here at the top of this show where he has a very strong personality. He's commandeering. He doesn't really listen to his bandmates. This situation, though, is like so raw for him. I mean, I don't know how he is as composed as he is in this moment with what this situation actually is and how deep they are going into his psyche and making him do it. It's a lot. I do feel for him. Daisy takes off her headphones. She wants to smooth things over a little bit. She says, I just wanted to tell you. Billy says, Daisy, look, we'll try your version and then we'll get the original. Okay. We don't need to argue. He's not even looking at her. He can't even look at her. And she says very softly, I was just going to say that I love the sound of your voice. And once again, because she's kind of in a little bit closer, and she says it softer than she was saying everything else, and she's got a bit of a smile on her face. And Riley Keough makes these choices sometimes that are a little unexpected, like when she was having the confrontation with Wyatt earlier. She got closer. You'd think she was going to shout. She lowered her volume. and it made you listen even closer and it sounded even more ominous. And in this situation, she leans in and you'd think she could say anything here. Like, maybe she's gonna dig the knife in or say something passive aggressive or make some sort of a victory cry. But she is just gonna straight up compliment him and softly. And she smiles and he's flustered. He doesn't know what to do. Like, what is happening? He's completely untethered in this situation. He doesn't know which way is up. Teddy says, "Okay, folks, this is Honeycomb. Take 3." Interview Billy smiles. He says, "Come to think of it, we never did do my version." So now we're going to see Honeycomb being recorded. And the camera, some beautiful camera work. We're going to get more and more advanced, complicated camera work for songs as we go through this series. But here we're in the studio with them. It needs to be a big sweeping moment. The camera's going to start sort of like behind her shoulder. And then it starts kind of up, and then it goes in front of them, down, shooting them up like a real like hero moment, like they're, you know, like the idols we all look up to. And then it comes back around over his shoulder. It doesn't do a full circle, but we're going to see just this really interesting, like sort of sweeping camera motion that makes us feel like, wow, these two, like we're bringing them together and we're looking up at them and sort of admiring them. Um, so they're looking into each other's eyes for most of this song. And they're singing these lyrics now. How did we get here? How did we get out? We used to be something to see. Oh, baby, look at us now. Baby, look at us now. The thing we've been doing ain't working out. Why can't you just admit it to me? It must be so hard for Billy to sing these lyrics. Oh, baby, look at us now. Baby, look at us now. We switch to this static shot. It's like a medium shot. We can see like medium amount of their bodies. Daisy's had one hand on her headphones. I'm wondering if anybody who knows the technical side of this, like, is that just where she's putting her hand, or is there a reason she might be doing that? She's had that for most of the song. Um, Billy at this point mirrors that, and he's going to put his hand on one ear. This thing we've been doing ain't working out. Why can't you just admit it to me? Oh, baby, look at us now. Baby, look at us now. Oh, we could make a good thing bad. We could make a good thing bad. This thing that was meant to be a song in Billy's mind of reconciliation with Camilla and saying there's hope for us for the future is saying this is going to be the worst. This is going to be awful. Like, good. Can't we just admit it? This sucks. Um, like, you know, he had promised to write her a song way back when at the laundromat, and this can't be it. Like, no way. He thought he had one, but nope. This is the opposite of what he thought he needed to say to her. We hear this whole song. We see Teddy. He is speechless. The music ends. Daisy looks to Billy. Billy looks down. He can't even like look at anybody in this room, especially because Daisy seems to understand this is what he's feeling. So how can you look that person in the eye? How can you say it to their face? Anyway, I love that they didn't end the episode there, but they give this little extra bit here. Billy is on the phone with Camilla. Camilla says, "So how was it?" We're going to switch between shots of Billy on the phone with Camilla here and Billy in the playback room listening to what they actually got, listening alone to what they actually got. Camilla says on the phone, "So how was it?" We hear the playback of the song. We watch Billy listening to it. We hear Daisy singing now, "Where do we stand?" Billy on the phone with Camilla says, "Is a nightmare." Daisy saying, "Baby, baby, baby." And Billy on the phone is saying, "Yeah, the whole thing was a total wash." You hear Daisy's voice. Billy boosts the level of it so he can hear it better. She says, "And if this was your plan, tell me why you've been crying in the dark." And that voice of her singing those words echoes. He is in this room alone listening to playback. And if I watch his face, Billy just has like an almost imperceptible nod. Like Here I am practically crying in the dark. That is absolutely me. This woman wrote lyrics that seem to get right into his soul and see exactly what he was feeling. And he was writing something else that he was trying to be. But this is more the real thing. And she knew that. And so he doesn't want to admit that on the phone to Camilla. He says, it didn't work. It was a wash. But here in this room, listening to Daisy's voice sing those lyrics to the song he had originally written, it looks to me like he realizes it wasn't a wash. And as much of a nightmare as it probably was for him, it's probably a good song and it's probably the truth. So there is for me a total split between what we hear him saying on the phone to Camilla and what he seems to be realizing while he's listening to this song back. And it's the same split as we saw between his lyrics and Daisy's lyrics. Really smart. And I love that we've had some of these cool editing choices here in this episode. This and the one where we saw Billy pick up Julia for the first time, and then like the future of all the times he'd pick her up and then come back to that first time. I like that they're giving us a couple of these cool ways to just play with time a little bit. Um and just let it be interesting and fresh for us. One more thing, we're going to see Simone and Daisy's place. Daisy comes back. Simone greets her. Hey, how was it? Daisy says, probably the best day of my life. Well, of course you feel that way, Daisy. Nobody held a mirror up to you yet, now did they? Um, but maybe we'll get that down the road. So, she was the one holding the mirror, and I guess that feels better. But my goodness. Okay, that is episode 3. Let's just recap the music. I've mentioned this along the way a little bit, but of course, I always mention the opening credits song, Dancing Barefoot by Patti Smith. We've got Mama Told Me to Watch Out by Freddie Henchy and the Freddie Henchy and the Soul Setters. We've got Let's Dance by Family Plan, Plan with 2 N's. Naturally by HP Riot. We've got Will It Go Round in Circles by Billy Preston. We've got One Happy Christmas by Tammy Wynette. We've got some songs from the 6 that we've heard before. Look Me in the Eye, Flip the Switch. And in some of those cases, it was like other people singing them. Songs from Daisy, we heard Nobody Needs earlier in the episode. Again, this is another time. And then this time I'm going to credit this one as a Daisy Jones in the 6th song, Look at Us Now, Honeycomb. And it's funny that in the way this song is titled, it's Look at Us Now, Honeycomb. So Billy originally had Honeycomb, but he didn't win that battle either. And then a song from Simone, Up to You. Okay, favorite quote. I'm going to give 2 honorable mentions and 1 favorite. And I'm going to keep it all Daisy and Billy for this one because, it's pivotal that we've brought these characters together. I think even if you don't know anything that's ahead in this show, you can imagine that it's important to bring these 2 characters together. And it's not a spoiler because if you saw the first 3 minutes of the show where they did like the scenes from the future from the 1977 show, you can see that there's meant to be a lot of tension between these characters. So I definitely wanted to focus on these 2 in terms of the favorite quote section. So honorable mention 1 from Daisy. Did you guys want to record something or fight more? I'm fine either way. Just putting it out there. I'm here to work. How about you? Okay. Billy says, and these 2 quotes kind of come sort of almost back to back. Billy says, what do I think the song is about? What the song that I wrote? What do I think the song that I wrote is about? I just love, I, I love the way that Sam Claflin delivered it. I love the line. I love how challenging it is. I love how it's just like, oh, me? Do I know? It's so good. Okay. But my favorite line, my favorite quote from this episode from Daisy. It doesn't sound honest and it sounds simple. And I don't know you very well, but you don't seem simple to me. Talk about seeing a person right the first time you meet them. And to be able to say something like that, you know? And he doesn't even know how to respond to it. It's so correct. So I love that quote, and it's on the money as far as I'm concerned. Okay. And in terms of questions that I would love for you all to think about and share your thoughts about, I guess there were a few that I asked along the way, but two that I really wanted to look at um, today. Maybe I'll add a third one, actually. Let's start with Simone. Um, what do you think? Like Simone and Bernie meeting for the first time. Bernie even suggesting, like even putting any sort of a signal out there for Simone, catches Simone off guard. What do you think her dating experience is up until this point? I'm just curious how many different versions of a backstory we might all have in our heads for her. I'm sure I imagine there's a lot of them. Um, but tell me what you think Simone's been dealing with up until this point, or how she's been in the dating world up until this point. Second question, did Camilla move to LA for Billy, or did she move with Billy to LA for the life they both wanted? How much do you think the self-awareness that she thinks she has there is correct? Or do you think that she's not assessed this correctly for herself? Um, I want to see where people stack up on that one because I have an opinion and I was sharing it today, but I wonder if I'm kind of in my own head on that and maybe I need to get some outside perspective. So let me know what you think on that point. And the third question is very broadly, what did you think about the first interaction, that first studio session between Billy and Daisy? Um, I think on an initial read of it, an initial watch of it, you could feel like these two were really difficult people. But I think in this particular situation, I put a lot of that on Teddy, not being honest with them about what they were doing in that room and how much consent each had to the other one. So I think on a deeper dive, I give them more grace, but I'm curious again, am I too close to this? So, what are some of the big takeaways that you have from this first interaction, this first studio session between Billy and Daisy? And if you have anything to say here that has a spoiler in it, just start your comment with spoiler at the top so people who are brand new to the show know to be careful. But yeah, I'd love to see what your reactions are to watching this back, especially if you're somebody who on a rewatch maybe doesn't start with the first episode or two or three. When you go back and you see this here now, like what's your feeling on that first real meaty interaction between those two main characters? That's my goodness. Here we are, episode 3. We are just going right through these. I mean, next time we're going to be on episode 4 already. That's how it works, 3 and then 4. So I'm just loving really getting into this show and seeing what new information comes up for me. And I wonder what comes up for you in the process as well. So can't wait to get into episode 4, track 4 next time. And in the meantime, everybody go out there. Don't be the muse, be the somebody. Bye.